Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Well, today's phrase is the table is starting to turn. Now, we can use this phrase in a number of ways. We can talk about the tables turning, we can talk about turning the table on somebody else. And we can also use it in both singular and plural. Now, I want to explain a little bit because it has some slightly varying meanings. Okay, so let's begin. The table is starting to turn means that the power which someone holds over you is beginning to move, and you are the one who is going to have that power instead of the other person. Let me just explain a little bit. So imagine that in politics, somebody wins an election. You could say the tables are turning. The opposition party is now getting into power. They were overlooked for so long, and now the table is starting to turn. It's the same in a legal battle. The evidence initially pointed to someone being the bad man, being guilty, but now a new witness has appeared. The tables are turning. Now you can hear there I use the plural, tables rather than table. In education, she struggled with learning English for many years, but with dedication and the right teacher, finally the tables are turning, and she's now top of the class. And that's a little bit different because there was no clear guilty party, but obviously the idiom is the same, the tables turn. Okay, it's a little bit difficult, this, isn't it? Another one might be in sport. So after someone loses the first three games of tennis, uh, the the team or the people started to win, and you can say the tables have definitely started to turn in their favor. So you can hear there that it's when the power shifts to you, even if it's not clear where the power was to begin with. Okay. So, for example, in the education one about the woman learning English, the tables turned for her. Yeah. So it means that she became top of the class, but it wasn't like someone was withholding power from her. And if you compare that to the political one, obviously there was a ruling party, and then the opposition came in and the tables turned. The power was taken away from the leading party and it went to the next party. So it's a very interesting phrase. It's a very interesting phrase, and we're going to go through a song which will help us to understand it more. It really is a quite a common phrase here. You can also use it in a way which is about turning the table on somebody else. And this is more or less the same as what I've just been describing, but it's when you take action, because the ones I've described a moment ago, it's a little bit like luck or fortune has changed things. Because when you say the tables are starting to turn, it's almost like the wheel of fortune is changing or moving. But if you turn the tables on someone, you make it happen. For example, if you think about a relationship, we can say she was always the one making decisions in the relationship, but after a while, she turned the table on him, ensuring her voice was heard equally. Or in entertainment, initially criticized by everyone, the film turned the table on its critics and became a great success. So it kind of implies that somebody was actually responsible for turning the table. So you can see the difference. In the first examples, it was almost kind of mystical. The tables are finally turning, but we don't say who turned them. It's more like the kind of examples you would find in the passive voice about the tables being turned. But in these last examples, we're actually saying that somebody turned the tables. So, for example, you could say, after hours of negotiation, the woman introduced new information that turned the table on her opponents, giving her the leverage she needed. So, quite a complex little phrase, but a lovely phrase, and it's one which is kind of all about justice. And I think the Wheel of Fortune really highlights that. If you imagine the wheel turning, leaving someone in a different position from when they began, that's a really good way to think about this phrase. Right, let's move on because time is passing. So we want to talk about Tracy Chapman's song, Talking About a Revolution. And Tracy tells us in this song that there's a protest happening, a revolution is going on, a quiet, silent revolution. And she tells us in the first verse of her song, which is called Talking About a Revolution, she says, "Don't you know they're talking about a revolution? It sounds like a whisper. Don't you know? Talking about a revolution, it sounds like a whisper." Well, that's quite clear enough. I mean, she's basically telling us that there's people talking about a revolution quietly. It sounds like a whisper. It's a very quiet thing. And then she tells us, while they are standing in welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. And then she tells us again, don't you know, talking about a revolution, it sounds like a whisper. And she's saying they are talking about a revolution, but she's dropped the they, okay? So basically, let's go through this. So while they're standing in the welfare lines, well, you know that in the UK, we are very much a welfare society. We give money to everyone who isn't working, who is working, or sorry, everyone who is working, or people who are working, people who are disabled, students, people who can't reach the minimum wage deadline. They are allowed to claim what we call welfare from our governments. Now, these welfare payments are very common, but you obviously have to go and tell the government that you're searching for a job or why you need the money. And before the internet came, you basically had to go and stand in a line, you know, in areas of huge unemployment. There were dozens of people standing in big queues at the government offices to sign on bits of paper to get benefits. And I remember during Margaret Thatcher's time, she closed a lot of factories, and there were queues throughout the streets uh, for some of these government offices. The whole thing was tragic. But anyway, so she's telling us here that while they're standing in the welfare lines to get their benefits, and then she says, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation. Now, the Salvation Army is a welfare charity here. It's also a church. They give out food to the homeless. If you live in the Mediterranean, it would be something like Caritas. Or if you're living further afield in other countries, think of a charity which gives things to people and you can just go and collect it. Like the Red Cross, for example, in the Mediterranean, that's known as Cruz Roja. I think across the Arab world, there's one called the Red Crescent. There's also various other Islamic alternatives to that. So you can imagine she's saying crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation. So she's basically saying those people who use the food banks, those people who use the Salvation Army. Across the English world, the Salvation Army is known for being one of the biggest charities who distribute food. And she's calling them here the armies of salvation. I don't know why she did that. Probably because Salvation Army doesn't fit into her lyrics. And then she says, wasting time in the unemployment lines. And what she means by that is when you're standing around in these welfare lines, so unemployment line and welfare line is the same thing, sitting around waiting for a promotion. And then she says, don't you know, talking about a revolution, it sounds like a whisper. And then she goes on to tell us, because finally the tables are starting to turn. Talking about a revolution, finally the tables are starting to turn. So what that means is that finally power is going to the working man. And she's good, isn't she, Tracy Chapman? I like her. Her songs are a little bit sad, but this one is very good. And then she tells us, don't you know you better run, 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 run. And then she says, run, 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 run. And then she says, oh, I said, you better run, 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 run. And then she repeats again, run, 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 run. I don't know where she wants us to run to, but she's saying it's time for us to change. A revolution is coming. Very nice protest song, that, isn't it? Made me feel quite excited for a few moments there. So that's it. The table is starting to turn, or the plural, the tables are starting to turn, or you could simply say, you're going to turn the tables around for yourself in order to make your life better. And that's it. The tables are starting to turn. There we are. So that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this today, talking about the tables turning. And who knows, maybe where you live or in your personal life, the table is starting to turn. So I'll see you all again soon. And I wish you all a wonderful day, whatever you're doing. Bye.